For over 110 hours now, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has been underway. Here are some of the haunting images from Ukraine, a country that's under siege. A missile struck a residential building in Chernihiv, a city 150 kilometers north of Kyiv, according to state communication service. 2 lower floors were set on fire. There is currently no information about casualties. Massive street fighting and heavy resistance at the Donetsk region of Ukraine, haunting images of not just military tanks rolling down the streets of one of the largest Ukrainian cities, but men in military uniform hanging Russian flags on administrative buildings. Dead bodies lying on the ground in the streets of Kyiv, Ukraine's second largest city. The battle for Kyiv has seen heavy shelling by Russian forces, and the impact of this shelling is seen on the streets. What was once a bustling street now sees dead bodies lying around. A truly haunting selfie video from Bucha city, close to the capital of Kyiv. A video shows what appears to be a resident filming the destruction with some vehicles on fire. Bucha city is another part of Ukraine that has been pounded by Russian forces. Several residential buildings have been hit. This image is the definition of desperate times calling for desperate measures. Citizens getting together to meet and make Molotov cocktails after the Ukraine government asked citizens to make these cocktails to use as a weapon to protect themselves. Even breweries in Ukraine are joining in not to make beer but Molotov cocktails. What I want to do on the Newstrack just now is give you a full sense of what happened on day 5 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Broadly, a massive escalation in the kind of weapons being used by the Russian army, now using artillery, mortar, missiles on civilian targets, so a huge escalation on that score. And secondly, none of the major cities of Ukraine, whether it is Kyiv or Kharkiv, being taken over by the Russian army yet. So this cannot be President Putin's first plan. Very clearly, all the battle plans that were made haven't panned out in the battlefield as the army would have hoped for. Why is that happening? We'll focus on that in this India Today War Room on the Newstrack tonight, but I want to show you all of what happened in the battlefield today.
If you can see there, these are all the foreign journalists from almost 25 to 30 countries, which have been brought here in 4 different buses by the Ministry of Defense, and to show them certain locations like hospitals where people are admitted, children are admitted. See this guy?
La policía acaba de hacer un control y acaba de detener con armas en sus manos a un grupo de personas. No sabemos qué es lo que empujó a esta situación. Lo que sí sabemos es que es una situación muy tensa.
Could you see this? Could you take it on video?
Yeah, we got all of that. We got all of it live, Rajesh, here on India Today.
So what I can show, look at this, the crowd of foreign journalists, everybody crowded around. They thought this guy is a Russian militia, civilian Russian militia, and they pinned him on the ground. And look at the reaction of the press here. These are the journalists from almost 30 countries around me, and look how they're reacting.
This is like in the middle of the road. What these people have done, they are trying to put some kind of obstacles or trying to remove something. They are putting obstacles here so that this road could be denied in case of an invasion. So the road could be denied in case of an invasion. These are heavy concrete blocks being placed, which will also serve as a kind of probably anti-tank obstacle. Tanks can't go over them. And this is in the middle of a normal highway here, normal main road in the middle of the Kyiv city. This is a residential block almost in the center of the Kyiv city, which has been hit by a missile day before yesterday night. And this is next to a big supermarket here, on the biggest in Ukraine, Novus, and see the queue. Queues are starting from there all the way. They're going, this is the same queue going around, then taking a circle here and people standing here. It's a continuation of same queue here, same queue continuing till here.
I would like to show a bomb site, the place where the bomb fell, a missile fell, and a house was damaged, and a few vehicles were damaged. I'll turn my camera around if you would focus on that.
We can see, Rajesh. Tell us what you're seeing.
This is the place where the bomb actually fell, where it hit the ground. And this is a building behind me, which was totally shattered after the attack, after the bomb fell. The impact, if you could see, has gone beyond 30 to 40 meters all around. And if you see, that is what remains of a car. You know, half of it is strung across the tree. This is the remnants of in fact, 2 cars. If you could see how the effect of the bomb.
I'm in the bus which is taking the foreign journalists all over the Kyiv city and to some destinations. This bus has been organized by the Ministry of Defense. There are journalists from many countries which are being taken around, and they're taking us to some location now to show us things related to war. So how did it happen? This attack happened? Can you come here, please?
It happened on Saturday, and now we can see a 13 years little boy who are suffering because of aggression, and that's terrible things is happening now in Ukraine, and the children are suffering, civil people are suffering, and it's not okay, it's not normal that just civil people are injured and are dying, and one boy was killed.
This is a basement of the hospital, because they've shifted all the children from top floor. There are 5 floors here. They've shifted them down to the basement for safety reasons, so that if there is an air attack, the children are safe. If you can see here, the children are there. They're not in space here, but children are there. They'll be safe here, and that's why they were brought here. If you see, there are injured people here, there are more injured children. There, if you see the corner, there are more injured children. Can you please show on there? So there are injured children everywhere, and everybody has been shifted to the basement for their own safety. This is Rajesh Pawar reporting for India Today from Kyiv.
Maria Sarayenko joins us live from Kyiv. She's been helping our viewers understand what's happening on the ground. This is day 5 of the invasion. We just saw that ground report from Rajesh Pawar. Maria, can you take our viewers through what you're seeing around you on the streets of Kyiv this evening?
Yes, I'm now in the old town Kyiv, spending time here. Finally, I managed, to break free from spending time only on like in shelter and in my flat. So because today is a little day is more free than it used to be 2 days ago, so we had no shelling today, no bombing, because today is the day of negotiations, and everybody was waiting for the information about how they have done. So now we have the report that they are already came to finish, but not yet the information of the outcome and what this could possibly mean for us. So now what's the situation in the street? You can clearly see people who are trying, to get their walks. For example, I will turn the camera and show you a little bit of street. So it's old town. It's usually so we flip the camera. Usually very busy place. People are going here for walks, but now you see not so much people, and all of them are carrying their stuff, some food, because it's again a curfew starting at evening at 20 p.m. At 8 o'clock p.m. Meaning, so everybody also need to stock up on food and be ready for any restrictions. So the mood in Kyiv today is also a little bit lightened because of no shelling, no nothing, but the news which people are getting all over from all other parts of Ukraine are really very disturbing. We now have seen the recent reports about what's the situation in Kharkiv Oblast. We see the deaths, numerous deaths of civilians, and that is really disturbing information. And the local administration says it's almost like genocide. So a really bad news for all of us here in Kyiv, also in Kharkiv, and for us here, it means that Russia wouldn't stop only bombing our military objects, only several civilian objects. So the aims of occupier are now going further beyond, and nobody can even predict in what way. So This is the mood here in Kyiv right now, in the capital of country, which is going through real war with Russia. But today is more calm day, but not, the time to feel relaxed and at ease.
I want to bring in now Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. He's a man who's been in some very special operations from the Indian Army side, understands military operations and planning. And can you explain to me, sir, on this war room simulation that we have, why you think the Russian Army's battle plans haven't been executed as they would have hoped? 5 days in, the Russian Army is still trying to get hold of Kharkiv, which is right next to the Russian border. They're still not dominating Kyiv. The intensity of the shelling is going up, but the Russian Army is not holding any territory. Do you think their plans gone all wrong?
Not necessarily, Rahul. I would put it this way that look at Kyiv, population almost 35 lakhs. Look at Kharkiv, population another 15 lakhs. So those kind of built up areas is not easy. Firstly. Secondly, I would put it that the Russians have succeeded in a naval blockade. Now you find right from Odessa to coming to Crimea, then Mariupol and all to Donbass region. That means the entire thing, whether it's the Sea of Azov or it is the Black Sea, they have virtually cut off Ukraine. So now Ukraine virtually is a landlocked country. So that is something which we need to keep in mind. Ukraine is virtually the size of Afghanistan. And Ukraine also has almost the same population as what is in Afghanistan. So you see the disadvantage that Afghanistan has when it's a landlocked country. Similarly, Ukraine, though resources-wise, a rich country, is the food basket for the entire, I would say, the whole of Europe, a country which has a population of 4 crores, can feed 60 crore people. So that's the kind of resources that Ukraine has. Yes, and air supremacy for the Russians. So Russians have total air domination, because you see the way the aircrafts are flying, the way the helicopters are flying on top of Ukraine is indicative that Ukraine has no control, because the entire air defense system destroyed, communication destroyed, radars destroyed, all the communications gone. So you find Ukraine lost on that. Now I just had the opportunity of listening to Mr. Abe, a member of the Duma from the Russians, quite close to Mr. Putin. And he said their aim wasn't to capture Kyiv or Kharkiv. Their aim was not to get involved into fighting. And he used the word again and again, which we've been hearing of, the word operation. He says we aren't into war. We are into an operation. So that's a very subtle way that they've been using. And he doesn't want Kyiv. But what I just heard also, that the Russians have given orders that all of them must vacate Kyiv. They're giving a safe passage to people to vacate Kyiv. That's an indication.
I'm just receiving images from the Prime Minister's meeting with his top officials. So we see Harsh Shringla there, the Foreign Secretary, Dr. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, sitting on the right of the Prime Minister. We see Kiran Rijiju, the Law Minister, General V.K. Singh, Piyush Goyal, Minister for Commerce and Industry, who will be on their way to the countries neighboring Ukraine to try and bring citizens back. That's Jyotiraditya Scindia, the Civil Aviation Minister Hardeep Puri, Minister for Urban Development. So this is the second time today that the Prime Minister is meeting his top officials, and before that they had a meeting yesterday when Prime Minister Modi came back from Varanasi. So what we're seeing is a massive effort on Operation Ganga. You got about 10,000 plus students of Indian origin who are in Ukraine, and the government has decided that 4 top Modi ministers will be sent to Poland, Romania, Slovakia and Hungary in an effort to bring these students back. Another advisory has been sent asking students A, not to panic, and B, see if they can head towards Western Ukraine, which is Ukrainian speaking and relatively speaking has been peaceful so far.
Young Indian faces in a faraway land at war. A country they had gone to study in for their futures, now broken and battered by shells.
This is the situation of our current bunker. They are not provided with any basic facilities.
Amidst the heightened fear and tension that has gripped the large Indian student community in Ukraine, the Modi government has pushed things into maximum gear. 4 top ministers have been deployed to personally be on the land borders surrounding Ukraine to ensure the smooth evacuation of every student. After 5 days of total panic and fear amidst the Russian invasion, a big move that could provide some comfort to worried Indian parents back home. Minister Scindia has been deployed to Ukraine's border with Romania and Moldova. Minister Rijiju to Slovakia, Minister Hardeep Singh Puri to Hungary, and evacuation veteran Minister General VK Singh to the border with Poland.
These special envoys will be traveling to these countries basically to coordinate and oversee the evacuation process there on the ground. If situation permitting, you might also find them going to the as close as possible to where the evacuation is happening.
Thousands remain stranded in Ukraine, and India is making an effort to get its citizens out as quickly as possible. And this is a task that's easier said than done, because any Indian assistance will only be possible at the borders and beyond. Here in Ukraine, whether it's the capital Kyiv or multiple other cities, getting out to those borders is virtually fighting a war against many hostile elements, including the weather.
This is the waiting room of Bucharest Airport, which has turned into a waiting room for Indian students, some who have turned up on their own.
Sending out a powerful message of national solidarity and Bharat's big bridge for young India. The government affirms that no student will be left behind. Bureau Report, India Today.
Joining me on the Newstrack live from Lviv is Ola Vorzubit, Deputy Editor-in-Chief at Taizaden from Ukraine. With us is Alexander Bretsky, defense journalist from Russia. We've got Jeff Smith joining us, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation and author of Cold Peace. I want to go across to Ola Vorzubit first on your sense of the military operations that Ukraine is having to deal with. We're being told that the negotiations are over, that a statement will be put out soon. Are you picking up any reason for hope? And are you afraid that in this safe passage which is being ordered, Russia essentially signaling get out of Kyiv or we'll come and bomb you?
Well, negotiations and peace negotiations always give hope. But at this moment and during these negotiations, even after Russia and Belarus promised Ukraine not to hit with rockets, with missiles during these peace negotiations, this promise was broken, and Ukrainian cities, especially Kharkiv, were under severe bombings during the peace negotiations. So as soon as they did not keep to their promise, I can't have any hope for better during these negotiations. And of course, Ukrainian army will be defending, and it is defending Ukrainian state, because this is their state, and they are really effective, as we see. And even foreign leaders are now amazed how Ukrainian army is strong and how strong it has its morale while repelling so huge number of Russian forces that are violating the borders, that are trying to get into the cities and so on. And also the huge strikes from the air. So the biggest
Alexander
threat...
Bretsky, you want to respond to the point that Ola makes, that there were supposed to be negotiations going up, and yet if you look at the images coming in from cities like Kyiv, cities like Kharkiv, the Russians actually seem to have enhanced the level at which these weapons are being fired. So you've got heavy artillery being fired into civilian areas, which goes against all conventions of warfare.
That's actually...
I hear you well, Mr. Bretsky. Please go on.
Sorry, I thought you asked me. Okay, so, well, that's certainly, I would agree to the Ukrainian colleague that that's very much seen as a sort of a violation, because when the peace negotiations start, the army should stop fighting. That's usually happens, right? So it's very difficult now to predict what the goals of the president of Russia are, because, it could be reasonable, quote unquote, or realistic to say, let's say, hold Donbass, and not go further. That's a Russian population. We protect, at least this is reasonable and understandable. But then to what? To pressure Mr. Zelensky to surrender on Mr. Putin terms? This is, right now, it's difficult, right? Ukraine has support, right? So for Mr. Zelensky to have certain dignity and to, to agree in certain terms, maybe to Ukraine vote not to join NATO or amend the constitution, that's a possible way. However, with there's so heavy fighting going on, I spoke to even people who had very Russian sentiments, like in Kharkov in Ukraine, in Odessa, and those people are very angry of the actions of Russia, of my country, because they see this as when bombings are falling on you, you don't really think good about the country who is making these things. But as I said,
the Russian president has put the nuclear deterrent forces on a state of high alert. Is that a sign of desperation? Because if it had happened far into the war, it would have still been understood. But on day 4, for him to do this, and the fact that the defense minister has confirmed that the nuclear forces are now on a state of high alert, why do you think he's doing that?
Well, it is a pressure to kind of show off that Russia is just reminding of how nuclear arms we have. Whatever I think about Mr. Putin, I don't think he's going to launch the nuclear war with the West or with some other country, just because Russian Federation itself, my motherland, would be also destroyed by the attack of another hostile power, let's say the United States. President Putin 8 months ago with President Biden have signed that famous phrase that you cannot win a nuclear war, as President Gorbachev and President Reagan have said before. So as I am talking to people from different Russian groups, the Russian society is very much divided. Some people are supporting those actions. And when I talk to them, they say, why we recall the suffering of Donbass. And even I do agree with this. This is not an answer. This is not an answer to hit an independent country. You have to deal with, with this politically. And President Putin has not done that for 8 years. That's the only thing. And also, a lot of blame goes with Mr. Poroshenko, not Mr. Zelensky, who was very much pushing things away. While Mr. Poroshenko was Mr. Putin's best friend. They named each other with names and patronymic and had pretty good relationship, It's
interesting to see a journalist out of Moscow speaking in the way that you're doing. You're a brave man, Alexander Bratsky, and you've provided a very different perspective from what we've been hearing from Moscow. I want to go across to Jeff Smith at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. Jeff, this threat laid out by President Putin, putting his nuclear forces on a state of heightened alert, how is it being seen in the United States?
I think it's being seen with some degree of alarm, but the majority of people, I think, have interpreted it as more bluster, as a sign of Mr. Putin realizing that the war effort isn't going quite as planned. I think there may be some degree of embarrassment there in an effort to raise the stakes and put Ukraine and the West on their back.
Okay, give me a moment. I'll try and fix that audio line with Jeff. We're having some disturbance in that connection. But what's very clear is that President Putin is getting desperate. His plan hasn't gone on like he would have hoped. And does that then, Ola, put Ukraine more in harm's way? Does that make people more anxious that you've got an autocrat who's put his nuclear weapons in a state of high alert? He clearly doesn't like what's happened so far and might want to push the pressure tactics up one notch.
Well, look, I guess what Putin said concerning the nuclear nuclear launch, this made anxious not only Ukrainians but people all over the world, because the circumstances of such deeds will feel not only Ukraine but all the world. So of course we're here a bit anxious because of that. But at the same time, we have now the 5th day of the war, and this is our now kind of a routine. So we have to repel the Russian forces that are coming. Yeah, well, people are a little bit anxious, of course, with that, but we have we have current challenges to face, so people are just doing that.
Okay. I want to show our viewers how Molotov cocktails are being made by people in Ukraine as an effort to try and push back. A lot of Ukrainian nationals getting together and actually putting together their own Molotov cocktails, which have been used in the war in Ireland, which have been used in the past in several countries, as essentially an effort by the civilian population to try and push back against the invading army.
In western Ukraine's main city, Lviv, employees at the Pravda brewery have joined the resistance against Russia. The brewery has switched from producing beer to making Molotov cocktails or petrol bombs. This after Ukrainian Ministry of Defense took to social media urging civilians to make Molotov cocktails to neutralize the occupier.
Why have we decided to make Molotov cocktails instead of brewing beer? The answer is simple, because we can. Everyone is doing what they can and what they know how to. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, until now there was no necessity to use Molotov cocktails. Ukrainians over the past few years have found themselves in a situation where they had to fight for their freedom, including fighting with Molotov cocktails.
The brewery is producing cocktails for the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces, made up of civilians who've responded to President Zelensky's call to take up arms.
We sent Molotov cocktails to our barricades in Lviv. We are trying to send as many as we can to the areas near Lviv. We sent some to Kyiv as well. I hope they will get there because we later learned that a bridge en route has been blown up.
While Molotov cocktails might seem ridiculous compared to Russian tanks and rockets, they are part of Ukraine's urban warfare that has stunned not just the world, but even Russia. The cocktails can be made easily. A glass bottle containing petrol or any other inflammable substance is used to create fire on a target.
We will either be victorious or there will be total collapse. Capitulation is not acceptable. After capitulation, they will face partisan war. There is no way they can win. They can only win if they destroy us all, and this is not possible.
They may be at war, but these Ukrainians haven't lost their sense of humor. Their bombs and beers are interestingly packaged, with insults directed at Russia's President Vladimir Putin.
There should be no bloodshed, but what they are doing now is beyond war. It is war terror. It is impossible to describe. I have a lot of friends in other places, and the stories they tell me are simply horrific. It is a terror that must be stopped. The best way to stop is not arms, more bloodshed, but words. But if words do not work, we will use everything.
According to Google search data, searches for how to make Molotov cocktail have shot up drastically in Ukraine in the last few days. It is clear that Ukrainians won't give up. Bureau Report, India Today.
While a full-blown war plays itself out on the streets of Ukraine, across the world, people are out on the streets supporting the Ukrainian people. And this has pushed leaders to act, to unite for Ukraine against Putin's aggression.
People are out on the streets showing their support and solidarity with Ukrainians. These are countries that once were under the red curtain of the USSR. And their leaders are also standing by them.
First of all, we must stand together with Ukraine. Because Ukraine is our protection now. They are fighting for us too. And we need support for Ukraine, and this support should be organized. We need a mechanism, well coordinated. I think that European Commission should organize this process together with whole Europe, and Also is very important to talk about evacuation mechanism for women, children and injured people. And in this process also should participate European Commission together with United Nations.
It's not all empty words either. The Czech Republic, for instance, is sending more arms and ammunition to Ukraine to help it counter Russian invasion. Its defense ministry committed to send machine guns, submachine guns, assault rifles, pistols and ammunition worth $8.6 million.
Dobré odpoledne, dámy a pánové.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have come here primarily to express my thanks. Thank you for being so supportive of a free and independent Ukraine. Thank you for your loyalty to democracy. And thank you for your opposition to Russia's imperialist ambitions.
Děkuji vám.
Australia, at the other end of the world, has also pledged to provide lethal military equipment to Ukraine. This comes after an earlier offer of non-lethal military equipment, medical supplies and a $3 million contribution to a NATO trust fund for the support of the besieged country.
The Ukrainian people have showed tremendous strength and tremendous resolve, but the situation remains terribly concerning. But I am pleased that we've seen an accelerating and increasingly strengthened response from Western democracies in standing up against what is thuggish brutality for which there's no justification.
The European Union has announced that it will provide $502 million for arms and assistance to the Ukrainian army, and further $56 million for supplies like fuel and protective equipment.
As the war in Ukraine rages on and Ukrainians fight bravely for their country, the European Union steps up once more its support for Ukraine and the sanctions against the aggressor, that is Putin's Russia. For the first time ever, the European Union will finance the purchase and delivery of weapons and other equipment to a country that is under attack.
And another taboo has fallen these days. The taboo that the European Union cannot use their resources to provide arms to a country who is being aggressed by others. Yes, they are unprecedented times, because the war is back in our borders, and that's why it is a defining moment for the European history.
Israel is sending 100 tons of humanitarian aid to assist civilians caught up in the fighting in Ukraine.
Export controls similar to those that they...
The United Kingdom is preparing a hit list of Russian oligarchs to target with sanctions.
Export of all dual-use items.
We've put support into the Ukrainian Navy. We've supplied anti-tank weapons, which are being used by the Ukrainians. And we continue to supply defensive weaponry for the Ukrainians to use.
As the war rages on in the streets of Ukraine, people in different parts of the world have come out on the streets in show of solidarity. The appeal is to stop the fighting, to bring back peace.
Chi fa la guerra dimentica l'umanità.
People making war forget humanity. They don't start from the people. They don't look to real life of people. Instead, they put ahead of everything their individual interest of power. They interest the perverse and diabolic logic of weapons, which is the farthest from God's will. And they leave behind common people who want peace. And common people are the real victims in every conflict.
Vladimir Putin thought he'd probably just be able to push the Russian forces in, and like Crimea, Ukraine would crumble. Nothing of the sort has happened. The whole world galvanized under the leadership of President Zelensky, who's led a heroic fight back on behalf of the Ukrainian nation. The one question in the minds of many who are watching at this time, and I want to put that question to General Sanjay Kulkarni, what might happen next? Given the current state of war, given the fact that Russia is still unable to take charge of any major urban center, how do you see this battle go on and for how long, sir?
Rahul, firstly, if they shed the ego, probably the thing will end within no time. But should that ego not be shed by either of the two leaders, then the Russians are heading for a very bad time, because then if they intend occupying Kyiv or Kharkiv, then it's fighting in built-up area, which is not easy. You saw the preparation by the Ukrainians, Molotov cocktail. You see the kind of Stinger missiles that they have now, Javelin missiles. So in fighting in built-up area, now it's a close battle. And in that close quarter battle, well, the losses will always be of those like the attackers, and in this case, they're Russians who are attacking the Ukrainians. So it's not going to be easy. And that is one of the reasons what the Ukrainians would want, that they can extend the Russians in and get them sucked into Ukraine, make them fight for what they're not prepared for, or they wouldn't want to do it, and then extend the battle as long as they can. Then the sanctions will start bothering the Russians. Because another month or so, the sanctions may not bother the Russians. After a month, if the Ukrainians can drag them for a month, then you'll find that there'll be a big, real problem for the Russians. But the Russians would want to actually close up the entire thing, what they call it, their military operations, within about a week or so. Because anything beyond a week seems difficult for Russia to pull along.
And we'll keep calling you back to our studio for perspective on what's happening on the battlefield in Ukraine, a battle of attrition, Ukraine wanting to drag this on, Russia hoping to finish this military operation off as quickly as possible. As this war rages on and as invaders from across the border try to overrun Ukraine, Russian forces are relentlessly moving towards the capital, Kyiv. Their ordered objective is to get rid of the man who has rallied his country to stand and fight, President Volodymyr Zelensky. He's an unlikely hero, an unassuming wartime leader of a country under siege. He is the puny David of Ukraine against the Russian Goliath, a man who thought comedy was his forte, caught in the tragic role of president of a nation invaded. And yet it is in this role that President Zelensky has found his largest audience ever, the people of the world.
Всім добрий вечір. Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут, прем'єр-міністр Шмигаль тут, Подоляк тут, президент тут.
His is the voice of defiance, a call from the heart that has gone out and firmed the defense of Ukraine against the forces of invasion.
I'm here to protect my wife, my family, myself, my country from the Russian invasion.
We will fight for our land and we will kill all Russians.
If somebody give me a weapon, I will fight. I'm not afraid.
Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, had everything wrong about being a wartime leader of a nation invaded. He's from Jewish stock in Eastern Europe with its history of anti-Semitism. His family spoke Russian. He grew up speaking the language of the invader. He happened to be a comic by profession. In 2019, the comic actor decided to run for presidency. And people took that as a joke. He called his party the Servant of the People Party. The outcome was comic relief. Volodymyr Zelensky won 73% of the votes and promised to bring peace to the restive eastern regions of Luhansk and Donetsk. What came was war. Not with Russia, but with his Russian namesake, Vladimir.
Once again, I appeal to the servicemen of Ukrainian armed forces. Don't let neo-Nazis and Banderites use your children, your wives and old people as human shields. Take power into your own hands. It seems that it will be easier for us to come to terms with you than with this gang of drug addicts and neo-Nazis who settled in Kyiv and took all Ukrainian people hostage.
Volodymyr Zelensky was born in 1978 into a Russian-speaking Jewish family of the then Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine.
His father was a professor of mathematics and his mother had studied engineering. The town of his birth, Kyiv, stands next to Babi Yar, where 33,771 Jews were shot and thrown into a ravine over the course of 2 days in 1941. Zelensky studied law and earned a degree in it, only to found a TV entertainment company. Zelensky found success in his vaudeville act. He and a few friends created a comedy troupe that became a famous act not just in Ukraine, as well as other Russian-speaking regions of a post-Soviet world. The prism through which Volodymyr Zelensky viewed the world changed when Vladimir Putin invaded the land of his birth in 2014. That was what made him take his first political step. He donated a fortune to arm the then weak army of Ukraine. He chose his side when he relocated his production company to Kyiv and began to fully master the Ukrainian language. Something that was to be a big help when he played the most successful comic role of his life. In the TV series Servant of the People, Zelensky plays a school history teacher whose rant against the rampant corruption in government gets recorded without his knowledge by a student and is posted on social media. The video goes viral, and without even wanting the job, the teacher gets elected president of Ukraine. And then, through set pieces, bumbles his way to become a heroic leader of his country. On 20th of May 2019, facts overtook fiction when the 41-year-old Volodymyr Zelensky took the oath of the highest office in Ukraine. And when the new president had to make his inaugural address, he said, "It wasn't just me who took the oath." He said, "Each of us put a hand on the Constitution, and each of us has sworn loyalty to Ukraine." It was an oath of loyalty that the unlikely politician would prove himself worthy of in the conflicts to come. Despite the fact that entertainers entering politics are viewed, if not with suspicion, but certainly with skepticism.
Наявною у нас інформацією ворог позначив мене як ціль номер 1, мою родину як ціль номер 2.
President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine is believed to be number 1 on Vladimir Putin's hit list. Western intelligence agencies have claimed this, and Zelensky himself has acknowledged it. He says his family is second on the list, but that he and they will remain in Ukraine. He categorically turned down a US offer of evacuation. Instead, he asked for arms.
Nobody will force us Ukrainians to give away our freedom, our independence, our sovereignty. But it looks like the Russian leadership is trying to do it just by the way of destroying their own country.
To prove that he is still there and not running away, the president of Ukraine has been regularly posting self-taken videos in front of the very recognizable presidential palace, telling the people of Ukraine that he is living up to his promise, even if he has to die for it. Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is playing the role of a lifetime. He has already given a performance that has made him a hit across the world. This unlikely wartime leader of his country has won the hearts and minds of people around the world. His actions has more than established the contrast with his nemesis, with whom he shares a first name, the meaning of which ironically means ruler of the world. When Vladimir Putin ordered his troops to invade Ukraine, he possibly made one miscalculation. He had not accounted for the stellar performance that his opponent was capable of giving, a role that has touched the heartstrings of audiences across the globe. Whatever be the outcome of this war in Ukraine, History will record Zelensky as the hero in shining armor, while Putin has already joined the ranks of all-time world villains like Hitler and Stalin. When the world's a stage and everyone is but an actor in it, there is no doubting that Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine stands at the edge of that stage, where life meets performance and only truth shines forth.
Is Russia about to launch an all-out attack, a big attack on Ukraine's capital of Kyiv? And is the capital, which hasn't fallen just yet, key to President Putin's domination and complete invasion of Ukraine? Let's go across to Gaurav Sawant, who's been in Kyiv, to understand what that's like. Gaurav, it's really good to see you. I wish you were reporting in better circumstances. It is your birthday today, so I first of all wish you a very happy birthday. But getting to the heart of what we are talking about right now, the possibility of a big attack on Kyiv. What are you hearing in the city?
Shiv, there is panic in Kyiv as you and I speak right now, because people are leaving this city in droves. They're leaving in thousands and thousands, getting to this main train station here in Kyiv, trying to get out to the first available city on the first available train. It's easier said than done given the crowds that are here. The train station is unable to handle these numbers, but the apprehension is that there could be a massive attack either tonight or in the next 24 hours, and that's why people want to be out of harm's way, Shiv.
We already know that cruise missiles have been hitting certain localities in Kyiv. We've seen that large armored column that's headed, on the highway towards Kyiv as well. How well defended is the city, and how important is it for Putin to take Kyiv for total domination in this?
Shiv, the effort is on the Ukrainian army's side to defend Kyiv as well as possible, and they do have their anti-tank guided missiles and their columns strategically placed on all the major roads and the access that leads to Kyiv. But how long will they be able to defend the Kyiv is the big question. As far as you very rightly mentioned, cruise missiles have been hitting Kyiv regularly, but these have been aimed at very specific targets, at strategic airfields across this country. 14 airfields targeted, ammunition dumps targeted, fuel stations targeted, fuel dumps targeted. But right now, the apprehension is that now the attack, the scope of attack, Shiv, now would be much wider, leading to more destruction in an effort to get the Vladimir Zelensky regime to give up and surrender, which he, of course, just today he said there is no way that Ukraine will surrender.
We'll have to see where this goes. Stay safe, my friend. I will keep coming back to you. Thanks very much.
Shiv, thank you.
So that was Gaurav Sawant in Kyiv. He's been there for the last few days. The capital city has been able to hold off Russian forces for the last few days. But has that defense now come to an end? What's next for Kyiv? We'll have to wait and watch.